The rise of a nation. The heroic story of America, long before the skyscrapers and shining cities. Before freedom rang from the Atlantic to the Pacific, the land we now call America was a vast wilderness, a canvas of mountains, rivers, and plains painted by time itself. Great civilizations of native peoples lived here for thousands of years. The Iroquois built alliances in the dense northeastern forests, the Cherokee flourished in the valleys of the south, and the Pueblo people carved homes into the cliffs of the desert. They were hunters, builders, and storytellers, guardians of the earth who called it the Great Spirit's gift. Then came the winds of change across the ocean. In 1492, a sailor named Christopher Columbus crossed the unknown seas under the Spanish crown and touched the edges of a new world. Soon, explorers from England, France, and Spain followed, driven by dreams of gold, glory, and God. The vast land began to draw the eyes of kings and dreamers alike. In the early 1600s, English settlers built Jamestown in Virginia, the first lasting English colony in North America. They struggled through hunger, disease, and harsh winters, yet hope carried them forward. Not far away, in 1620, the Pilgrims sailed aboard the Mayflower and landed at Plymouth Rock. They sought not gold, but freedom, the right to worship as they believed. In the icy winds of New England, they signed the Mayflower Compact, a promise of self-government that would echo through centuries. 13 colonies soon rose along the Atlantic coast. From Massachusetts to Georgia, farms grew, towns bustled, and trade flourished. But under the surface, tension brewed. Across the sea, the British Crown taxed the colonies without giving them a voice in Parliament. "No taxation without representation," became their cry. When British soldiers fired upon civilians in the Boston Massacre, and patriots dumped tea into the harbor in protest, rebellion was no longer a whisper, it was a storm. In 1775, the shot heard round the world was fired at Lexington and Concord. Farmers and blacksmiths took up arms as the Continental Army, led by a tall Virginian named George Washington. The dream of independence had been born. A year later, in Philadelphia, a group of brave men signed their names to a document that would change history. The Declaration of Independence, written by Thomas Jefferson. It proclaimed that all men are created equal, endowed with the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The war was brutal and uncertain. Against the might of the British Empire, the colonies fought with heart and faith. From the icy misery of Valley Forge to the triumph at Yorktown, they held fast. In 1781, Britain surrendered, and the impossible became reality. A new nation stood free. The United States of America was born, but freedom was not yet complete. The young nation struggled to define itself, to balance liberty and order, unity and independence. In 1787, the Founding Fathers gathered again in Philadelphia to craft the Constitution. It established a government of the people, by the people, for the people, a promise that power would rest not in kings, but in citizens. George Washington became the first president, and under his steady leadership, the nation began to grow. New states joined the Union. The frontier pushed westward. Pioneers crossed mountains, rivers, and endless plains in search of a new life. Yet as the nation expanded, a deep wound divided it: slavery. Millions of African men, women, and children were enslaved, their cries haunting the soul of the Republic. The issue of freedom and equality threatened to tear the country apart. In 1860, a man named Abraham Lincoln rose to the presidency with a vision of unity and liberty for all. When Southern states seceded and formed the Confederacy, the United States faced its darkest trial, the Civil War. From 1861 to 1865, brother fought brother. Fields once golden with wheat ran red with blood. Gettysburg, Antietam, Shiloh. The names became sacred echoes of sacrifice. When Lincoln delivered the Gettysburg Address, he reminded the nation that this struggle was about a government of the people, by the people, for the people, and that it must not perish from the earth. In 1865, the Union triumphed and slavery was abolished, but the cost was immense. Lincoln himself fell to an assassin's bullet, giving his life so that the nation might live free. Reconstruction followed, a time of rebuilding, of healing the broken heart of America. Freedmen sought education, land, and dignity. But challenges remained. Prejudice, poverty, and injustice still shadowed the dream. As the 19th century marched on, America transformed again. The Industrial Revolution turned small towns into booming cities. Railroads stretched across the continent, uniting East and West. Immigrants poured in from every corner of the world: Ireland, Italy, Germany, China, each bringing hopes and hands to build a better life. In the face of hardship, they built factories, mined coal, laid tracks, and shaped a rising power. America became a symbol of opportunity, the land where dreams could be forged from sweat and belief. By the early 20th century, America stood tall among nations. But beyond its shores, the world trembled in conflict. In 1917, when war consumed Europe, America entered World War I to defend liberty and democracy. Young soldiers crossed the Atlantic to fight under a banner of stars and stripes. When the guns finally fell silent, the world looked to America as a beacon of hope. The Roaring Twenties followed, an age of jazz, innovation, and ambition. Cars sped down new highways, radios carried voices across states, and cities sparkled with electric light. But behind the glamour, danger brewed again. In 1929, the stock market crashed, plunging millions into despair. The Great Depression tested the nation's spirit like never before. Yet America endured. Under Franklin D. Roosevelt's leadership, hope was rebuilt through hard work and unity. The people refused to surrender. Then, in 1941, a new storm rose: World War II. When Pearl Harbor was attacked, the nation rallied overnight. Men and women joined the fight not for conquest, but for freedom. On the beaches of Normandy, in the skies over Europe, and across the islands of the Pacific, Americans fought with unshakable courage. When victory finally came in 1945, the world once again looked to the United States, not just as a superpower, but as a guardian of liberty. The post-war years brought prosperity and progress. Highways spread, suburbs grew, and a new generation dreamed bigger than ever. But within that promise, the nation faced another reckoning: the Civil Rights Movement, led by heroes like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and countless others. Americans rose to demand that freedom and equality extend to every citizen, regardless of color or creed. "I have a dream," King said, and that dream would forever change the soul of America. Through struggle and courage, laws were changed, hearts were moved, and the promise of liberty grew stronger. The 20th century rolled forward with triumphs and trials: the Cold War, the moon landing, the fight for women's rights, and the march of technology. America stood at the frontier of innovation, inventing, exploring, dreaming. From Neil Armstrong's giant leap for mankind to the birth of the Internet, the nation reached new heights, and through every hardship, from Vietnam to 9/11, the American spirit endured. People united in tragedy, rebuilt in hope, and stood tall once again. Today, America remains a land of contrasts and courage, a place where voices rise, where debates ignite, where change never stops. It is a nation built not on perfection, but on perseverance. From the first peoples who honored the land to the immigrants who built its cities, from the enslaved who sought freedom to the dreamers who reached for the stars, all are threads in one great tapestry. America's story is not finished. It is written every day, in classrooms, in fields, in labs, in marches, in songs. It is the story of ordinary people who dare to believe that freedom, justice, and equality are worth fighting for. From the whispers of the past to the roar of the present, the heart of America beats strong, not because it is flawless, but because it never stops striving to be better. A land born from courage, tempered by sacrifice, and driven by hope. The United States of America stands as a light to the world, a reminder that from struggle comes strength, and from freedom comes destiny. For in the end, the story of America is not just the tale of a nation, It is the story of humanity's eternal dream: to live free, to rise higher, and to leave the world brighter than we found it.